audio. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the news behind the news with Ralph Kintav on Mix 94.7 FM. And this afternoon, I am joined with Miss Dominique Hodge. Good afternoon, Dominique, and thank you for coming on the program.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Okay, great. So you are in line of the many young professionals on St. Martin who can expect or so far has received a private message from me, like we discussed off air. And something I definitely believe in doing is in talking with my peers,
Yes.
but really showcasing that, St. Martin has a lot of great minds, whether they're in business, in government, NGOs, etc. And people who contribute to the island, help build it, a new generation of leaders. And so you're here. And thank you again for coming on the program.
Thank you.
So as we continue, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what do you do?
Okay, so as you mentioned, my name is Dominique Hodge. I was born and raised on the island of St. Martin. And currently, I do a lot of things. I have a lot of different hats. But the main one right now would be Tropsicles, which is a company that does ice pops or any other types of frozen treats. And we use basically fruits that I have either in my backyard or that I can easily access. And that's basically how the idea came about, because growing up on a farm, I had an abundance of fruits. And it was like a lot of times, even when you gave them away, there was still a lot. And I was like, how can I use this instead of letting it go to waste? And I was afforded the opportunity to be able to look into making ice pops. At first, I was like, I don't really want to do this. But as I learned more about it, I really kind of got caught up in it. And at this point, I love it. But besides Tropsicles, I also help my parents. They have different businesses, and I assist them in different sectors, different positions.
Okay. So one of the things I like to go back to is the fact that you mentioned growing up on a farm. And not too many of us here in Simon can say that. I mean, we may have some wildfowl in our yard here and there. But, so can you tell us about that? What was that experience like and some of the fondest memories you have? Whether it's playing with animals and picking fruits and so forth.
So I've been blessed. My mother's from the town of Simpson Bay. So I've grown up with fishermen. My grandfather was a fisherman. My dad, he grew up on the Friend side. And then they moved to the Friend side when I was still pretty young. And they always had animals. So I've grown up where there's always animals around. My mom had parrots. My dad had different things, but then he got into the chicken business because it's something that passed on from my family. My grandfather had a chicken business, and then my uncle took over for a while, and then eventually my dad started his own. We've had pigs, we've had horses, we've had emus, we've had a little bit of everything, turkeys, everything that you can think of, we've had them. The only thing they didn't have while I was there was a cow, so I'm still trying to work on it, but I've grown up around animals, and one of my fondest memories would be just being there while, the pigs give birth. It's an experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really weird, and you learn life and death really quickly. But it's just something, we learned very young, like you don't go and touch the babies because then the mother, if you take off the scent, the mother doesn't want to keep them. But we've always grown up with animals, and I think that's a very important part for all kids growing up, to interact with animals on some level, because it just opens you up to another world, and it teaches you so much more than what you would just learn in your day-to-day basis. And animals are very compassionate, so you get a lot.
Yeah, indeed. When you say that reminded me of what led me to becoming what led me to fall in love with reading, which was actually a book I read about lions.
Okay.
I remember trying to escape chores by growing up in town, so by going to the library in town.
Okay.
And from there, I remember the first book I read was a book about lions, and I was so fascinated that I read the whole section on animals.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I found it interesting. So it just gave me that flashback.
Yeah.
And also, even as you mentioned that, I do know that, one of the things they look at with persons who, like how people treat animals, is people who tend to abuse animals.
Yes.
Also tend to be psychopathic, perverted
there's
as well,
a long
and
list,
so forth. Yeah. So But that's pretty cool. So besides that, what are some key things you've learned in rearing animals as well?
Well, it's really, each animal has their own personality, and you have to learn the animal. Right now, like, we have tortoises, we have a lot.
You have
And
everything.
yeah. But for me, these animals bring you joy, like, and they do it the way we think about God and how God loves us unconditionally. A lot of these animals love us unconditionally. For example, we had a cat, and I don't like cats. That's the one animal I don't like. But my brother, at very young, wanted a cat. So we got this cat, and my mom took it to the vet because we didn't want to have babies and stuff. She had already had some kittens, but unintentionally. So we were like, let's not add to the problem. But the cat grew older, and then one day my mom walked out, and there was a mouse on her doorstep. And you can imagine any Caribbean mother. She was like, why is this cat bringing me a mouse? What's going on? But a very dear friend of the family, she loves cats, and she told my mother, she said, no. She said, the cat is thanking you. This is a gift, because she went out and she caught mice, but she decided to share it with you. And you see that with a lot of animals. Once they see that you're taking care of them and you are there for them, they always do something as a treat. Like, when I come home, my dogs greet me as if, like, oh my gosh, you're amazing. You're the best person to walk through the door. But you see it with all animals. Once you treat them with care, they are very loving and compassionate. We have miniature goats. We really have a lot of animals. But the miniature goats too, just in spending a little bit of time with them, you can see their personalities come out. You see which one is the more playful one, which one is more quiet. And they each show their love and compassion in different ways. So it's really you getting to know your animals and being there with them, and they return that love tenfold.
Yeah, and a great thing too, about your experiences. Of course, there are many in the past, on St. Martin who could share not only that experience, but you as a young person, it's pretty cool. Yeah. But also, it makes you wish that to a large degree we preserved, our agricultural heritage, because at the end of the day, like we saw, I think perfect example is the lockdown, where this boom of planting, well, particularly planting, that took place. But still, animals, they come in handy. Not to sound bad, but if you want to butcher, do some butchering and stuff. That's something you ever did as well?
Me personally, no, I can't. I don't enjoy.
Are you vegan as a result?
No, I'm not vegan as a result. But I just don't enjoy it. Like, I know we do butcher chickens, but I'm not there when they're butchering. I don't want to see it. I know where they come from. I know the chickens are well taken care of, but it's just that whole process. It's not for me. But, with agriculture, especially when it comes to like animals and stuff, a lot of people say more people should get involved. And I will say that some people have tried to get involved, but as we grow, there have been, a lot of restrictions put in place, and not necessarily on the Dutch side, but on the French side, you have to follow European laws. And there's a lot of things. I'm not against following laws, but I feel like the laws need to be adapted for the country that they're in.
Yeah, of course.
And sometimes it doesn't work. So there's people who try, but then financially they can't afford the big stuff. When it comes to eggs, there's a lot of things that you cannot do following the European law. And fortunately, my dad has been able to meet those demands and those standards, but there are other people like your neighbor who has chickens in his yard can't meet those standards because he's not doing the production that would give him the finances to do that. Yeah. So there are people who try, but it's not always the easiest route to take.
Yeah, and I think that is what you share there is definitely the challenge of existing, as a Caribbean nation, people, but being influenced by European laws.
Yes.
Because years ago, there was a debate about whether or not, because I think cockfighting, for example, is illegal over here. But you can argue, hey, it's traditional, but then you'll have the argument that comes from the European side. It's, animal cruelty and whatnot. But,
they have it on the different islands as well. I won't touch too much on the cockfighting. That's a very hot topic. But it is traditional for the island. Something that has been traditional on the French side as well. Correct. Is there is a hunting season and there are certified hunters that can go and shoot ground doves and pigeons and certain things, but there are certain restrictions. I know this last hunting season, they just abruptly ended the hunting season because there was some research done in Guadeloupe, and they're saying that that is the mating season of some of these birds, so they're not allowed to. And it's literally, you go and you talk to any of the hunters, they're like, that's crazy. We can tell you when their hunting season is. We can like when their mating season is, we could tell you everything, and they have it wrong. But again, it comes down to European law, local laws, what is right, what is wrong. This is something that has been in place. So is this something that you want to fight for to preserve, or is this something that with the change of times you will have to let go as well? So it's always a toss-up. It's not an easy line.
Yeah, it's
straight
not
down the middle.
just straight up black and white. And yeah, that's such as a result of colonialism. But another thing that comes to mind is, of course, I know a lot of people also complain about their monkey problem. And that's something you guys have suffered. How do you?
Oh, yeah. I have monkeys. Well, I had monkeys right in the piece of land right next to my house. So I would wake up in the morning and the monkeys were in the neighbor's yard eating mangoes. For me, I believe iguanas and monkeys are kind of a problem. They're an invasive species. And I know now everyone feels like, oh, iguanas have been here. Iguanas have not been here all the time. There used to be like a few of the really green ones, but a lot of the iguanas were imported into the island. And before, over by the airport, there was a pond, and a lot of people let iguanas go over there. And my brother, I couldn't go, I was too young, but my brother and the older kids, they would go and they would catch iguanas as their like pastime in the afternoons. But then all of a sudden, we're kind of overrun with iguanas, we're overrun with monkeys, and they're not, natural to the island.
Yeah.
So we had snakes, and then they brought in the mongoose, and the mongoose got rid of the snakes. So where do we go with iguanas and monkeys? And I'm not saying, just go and kill them, because that is cruel. But we need to realize that, like, monkeys are very aggressive, and they remember things. So people have thrown rocks at them, and they will wait. They will not attack right away, but they will wait, and over time they will attack. So it's something that we really need to look into and figure out a way, but we need to be realistic as well that they're not native to the island, and more locals need to speak up, because I feel like a lot of times locals stay quiet and we just complain about what we see in the newspaper, but no one is actually stepping up. So there are times where, as I say, Martina, you do need to voice your opinion.
Definitely.
Otherwise, you can't complain when someone else writes history for you.
Silence is consent, basically.
Yeah.
In many ways. Yeah. So something that comes to mind, as you shared earlier with Tropsicles, and you also had a previous business venture which we'll get into. But you also grew up with a family that's been in business.
Yes.
So how was that like for you, and how has that helped shape you in your career?
Well, for me, I feel like my parents have always been a big influence in my life. They, at the time, had a supermarket. They had a local supermarket, and they grew this small supermarket into a bigger supermarket. And we've worked, well, the older kids have worked in the supermarket. I learned a lot of different things in the supermarket, dealing with tourists, customer service, also just cashing and regular things. And, at the time growing up, you don't see the importance. You don't see, this is kind of important. You just feel like, this is fun. I'm doing something like the big people, like great. But just in our home, we've always spoken about entrepreneurship, having your own business, doing things. But my parents have always pushed us to be critical thinkers. They say, yes, you can go to school, you can study, but you need to be able to apply what you're studying in real life. And so they always spoke to us. They always spoke to us with different different issues and stuff like that. And we were able to learn from them. I've always had a desire to be an entrepreneur. I just didn't know what, how. And then after having my first child, I kind of was just like, maybe it's not for me. And then after a while, you realize there's still something deep down that's kind of like nagging. Is like, I don't feel at home. And so it took me a little while. I had a little journey, but I came right back to entrepreneurship because of that foundation.
Okay. And so, speaking of journeys, I'm also curious. Like I said, is a question I usually ask everyone who comes here: is how was your study abroad experience, and why did you choose FSU, not FAMU?
That's so funny. If I knew it was going to be FSU FAMU, I would have, prepared myself. But honestly,
the last one is just
a joke.
Oh,
I know.
okay.
It's a Tallahassee thing. I totally get it. So I don't want to bash anyone, but I was kind of disappointed in my guidance counselor at my high school because I felt like the only information we were getting was for us to travel to Holland. And for me, I was never a fan of Holland. I have been there on vacation numerous times as a child, and it was fun for vacation, but I couldn't see myself living in Holland.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually traveled once for Christmas to visit my brother, and it was so gloomy. And I was like, I kind of want to see the snow, but this ain't it. Like, let me go home. And funny enough, later on you could connect the dots, but we were actually doing a student trip in Holland, and I got a call saying I had to resit an exam. And I was sitting on the bus and the wheels clicked and I was like, oh, I got to resit an exam? Sure, no problem. I decided to fail the exam. And I know people are like, what? You didn't really decide that? I didn't intentionally set out, but I knew in my heart that I didn't want to do it. So I did not put in any effort into the test. I literally just walked in. And when they told me I failed and I would have to resit, I was the happiest person ever. And they were like, this child is weird. But then I set my plan in motion. I decided, because I knew a few people in Tallahassee, I did my own research. I was like, where am I going to go? The reason why FSU and not FAMU is because originally my major was going to be communications. And at that time, FSU was one of the top schools in communications. Their college was very competitive, and I was like, this is the place for me. So I applied. I was accepted. I flew to Tallahassee, and when I stepped on the campus, I was like, this is home.
This is it, right?
Yeah, this is home. There's an overwhelming feeling that you get when you step on FSU's campus, but I was just like, no, this is it. And I guess I could jump right into it. Basically, when I got there, because I did VWO, no one told me about credits. So I was like, oh, I'm just going to be starting school. I'm a freshman. I'm just excited. And my first day, they were like, oh, by the way, you have 20 credits, so technically you're not a freshman. And I was like, what? What's going on? So I kind of sped up, and I found out in September that I would actually have to apply for the College of Communication by December. And I wasn't scared, but there's a lot of things you needed to have to be able to apply. Because again, it's a competitive school. Everyone's trying to get in.
Yeah.
You're not just going to walk in. My advisor told me to still take a shot at it because if I missed it then, I would have to wait another year. I applied. I did not get accepted. That was my first big failure. And I was like, I'm ready to go home. Yeah. But I spoke to my advisor, and he said, a lot of people study communication, but they don't know how to write.
That is true.
And he said, it's better for you to learn how to write because you can get a job in communication than for you to try to do something else and not get it. So he advised me to look into English creative writing, which I did. And I love reading. So that's something we have in common. But I decided, okay, I don't think I'm a writer, but let me try this. Because in my mind, I was going to do this for a semester or two and then go back to communication. Yeah, no.
You stuck with it.
I stuck with English creative writing. I had a minor basically in French and Italian. So I was just taking a lot of languages. And basically that also kind of let me, I could have chosen for a humanities minor as well. But it's really interesting to me. And yeah, that was that. And that's why I chose FSU, why I chose English creative writing. And here I am.
Well, it's all good.
Yeah, it all works out.
Because our school, communications is a factor, but wasn't the main thing. The journalism really was the main program at FAMU.
Yes. And I didn't want to be a journalist because I had never considered writing.
Yeah, I guess.
So it was
end up doing it afterwards.
I was like, oh, well,
But it's like a professor always told me, as long as you can write, you can do anything. And it's true. Yeah. Writing is such an essential skill.
It is.
Yeah.
And we don't give it enough attention, especially coming from here. I've seen a lot of students who've stumbled with their writing. they have great minds, but they just can't get it down on paper.
Yeah.
So for me now, and because of my major, it's like, yeah, you guys need to learn to write.
So, having studied creative writing, you also have a blog. What was that like, and how is the world of blogging?
I don't know if I'm the one to really comment on the world of blogging. I feel like I'm still a newbie.
Okay.
Basically, the way I got into blogging was I was seeing a lot of people being creative with their writing. I was seeing a lot of people producing books, producing different things. And I was like, I kind of had that like, wait, I have an English degree, an English creative writing degree, and I'm not doing what they're doing. I have that background. I'm not doing what they're doing. And I was like, why? I had to ask myself why. And I was just afraid because I never felt like I was a writer. I never identified as a writer, even after 4 years of intensive workshops.
Wow.
But it just got me to thinking. And at the time, because of the lockdown and everything, I had time on my hands. And I was like, let me just try it. Let me see. I was actually taking a course on Coursera. And one of the things we had to do was start a website. We could have started any website we wanted. And I said, you know what? Maybe this is the time for me to try the blog. And I did it. I liked it. And so I continued with it.
Okay. All right. And I could imagine how useful that came in with when you launched Perfect Moments.
Yeah. Well, so the blog came after Perfect Moments.
Yeah, I mean, as far as writing is concerned.
Yes.
And so what was the motivation for launching that? And can you tell us a bit about the services you offered?
Okay. Well, I started Perfect Moments when I came back from Tallahassee. I was basically, when I started it, I was pregnant at the time. And I was looking for jobs, but I wasn't finding anything. And it was like, no one was taking me serious with English creative writing as my background. And I was like, something, I've always been into events. That's what made me want to go into communication. I had a love for events. I wanted to be part of events, and that's what I wanted to do. But I also knew the importance of public relations. And that's something 10 years ago I've been saying a lot of the St. Martin businesses and politicians need.
Till today, yes, indeed.
Till today, yeah. But it was something that I basically just decided, hey, I'm going to do this. I registered the company, and I did it, and I did a few events. Everything was fine. And I think one of my biggest projects would be the Empower event. And that was just basically not only women's empowerment, just empowerment on a whole. Because I had been through things, being a single mom, coming back, not necessarily finding a job. And I had to work through all of that, like the negative, to come to this place. And you learn as you grow up that some things that worked as a kid are not going to work as you grow older. So there was a lot of change happening within me. And I wanted people to see that they can do it. There's nothing. We look a lot of times to people away in the US or different islands, and we feel like, oh my gosh, if they can do it, why can't I do it? But I feel like locally we had a lot of people that were showing they could do it, and we could look to our own peers to get that motivation to do what we wanted to do.
Correct.
That was also a learning experience because I had this grand idea in mind. I went all out, and although it was well received, the attendance was not what I wanted. And that took a large blow. And for years, I was like, up to now, people ask me, are you going to do another Empower? And I do plan to. I just haven't. My goal with Empower was not to make money. And I realized that the route I went in doing a big event wasn't the way to reach the people I wanted to reach. So for me right now, it's not about having the biggest event. It's about reaching the people that need to be reached. Yeah. So I know my target audience. I know where I have to go. But again, I think because I believe in Empower so much, I don't want to make the wrong move. I want to preserve that and really reach the right target audience this time.
Cool. So something that comes to mind then, for me is considering, being a single mom, coming back home and trying to find a way, like most of us do. But still, being able to find your it, let's say. What would you say are the things that keep you going and also the motivation to continue?
For me, it's two-part. Obviously, my kids. especially with my daughter. When my daughter was born, I really wanted to prove to her that she can do anything and be anything in this world. And with my son as well. But, you know, as I've grown, I've realized that even for me, it's, you know, coming up with a goal and then going after that goal and making sure you accomplish it and that feeling of accomplishment. And sometimes things don't go the way we want to. Sometimes things take a little longer, but it's not giving up and just being steadfast at what you want to achieve. And you said finding your it. I don't know if I found my it just yet, but I know now that I'm a lot closer than I was 10 years ago. I've grown a lot as a person, so I understand who I am and my capabilities and what I do want to go after. So I've raised the bar a little bit for myself, but I truly believe it's attainable.
Okay, so and leading up to that, what is your take on the skills necessary to be able to succeed, you know, and achieve that empowerment? Because, you know, I look at the fact that, okay, you said you haven't necessarily found your it, but you've done things that have done well. And so what were the key skills you realized, you know, are necessary that no matter what that it is, you will be able to succeed?
For me, so you have to have faith, and you have to have faith in God, and you have to have faith in yourself. And at times we might say, yeah, I believe in God, I trust God. But then when things get tough, we're kind of like, oh, God, why is this happening to me? But sometimes if he's given you a vision, you need to trust in that vision and go with it. And trust that he will provide along the way. And that's not necessarily financial, but he'll line up the things that you need to accomplish what you need to accomplish if it's God sent. Because a lot of times we jump into things and we're like, oh yeah, God told me. No. And he's like, I didn't say anything.
That's very true.
But then also you have to have faith in yourself. You know, a lot of times we beat ourselves up. We're our own worst critics. But in this world out there, once people see any hesitation, they will be quick to pounce. You have to walk in there confident. You have to walk in like you deserve to be in that room. And I'm not saying go in and be cocky. I'm not saying, you know, try to take over, but you need to be sure of your capabilities.
Confident.
Yeah. So once you are confident in yourself, you'll be fine.
Faith and confidence. Cool. So the next thing that comes to mind, going back to PR, you know, I would like for you to emphasize this because why is PR so important? Public relations.
Well, public relations is important because you are then in control of the image that is being projected out. Right now, the island, just on a whole, there's no cohesive message being presented to the public. Like, people from outside have no idea what's going on. Sometimes you get messages from people and they're like, are you guys having a war? Because we don't know what's going on, but we're hearing all these things. And it's really sad because there's no damage control being done. And I don't believe that there's anything as bad press. I studied public relations, so all press is good press. But we're always behind the ball. So we're always trying to fix the damage after it's done. No one is like looking ahead and saying, hey, maybe we might have a problem in the future. What can we do to stop this from happening? Or, you know, we're about to make a decision and these are two outcomes that can happen. How do we go about it? One thing I find the island lacks is there's not enough quality information being distributed. We've allowed people to come in and just put a badge on and say, I'm a journalist. And then we look and wonder why things go south. And people aren't doing enough research. And then another thing that we don't talk about enough, and I think it's on most islands, is we have this mentality that we feel we know better. So even when we're presented with facts, because our neighbor told us something, we believe, no, that's not true because the neighbor told me. And I've told people time and time again, you can avoid that with information, but you have to be consistent, concise, and it has to be easily digestible. You can't put out stuff that's not relatable to the public. I must commend like the SZV. They have been doing a pretty decent job. You know, I admire the work that they're doing, and it's not easy because they're trying to go more digital, and you have a lot of our society is basically older folks who are not technologically advanced, but they've been trying, and I can see the effort there. But on a whole, the island kind of needs to step up, and we need to stop just, it's like someone says something and we release a press release. We do this. Public relations is not just putting out a press release, you know?
I mean,
a lot
PR,
of these,
but my goodness, it's not PR.
No, and I feel like a lot of these politicians, they wake up today and they're like, I'm going to be a politician. And that's it. Like, they just say, okay, well, maybe I need to go buy some new clothes. I need to talk to a few more people. But they don't have a plan. They don't know, like, where they're going, and they're being led all over the place. You need to be...
And the country as a result.
Yeah, so you need to be in control of what's being said about you. And obviously people will talk, but you need to be able that your brand, and politicians should become their own brand, but your brand should speak for itself. And you should be able to have a brand that people can recognize. So with you, Ralph, people may know things about you, but they know, hey, he's going to give it to us honest, straight, and this is how we're going to move forward. And if someone comes in and says, hey, no, Ralph is a liar, you would be able to kind of adjust the narrative. And I'm not saying you ignore what someone is saying, because if the narrative is out there that you're a liar, there's work that needs to be done to get people back on the track. But here it's just like, oh, no, we're going to put out a press release saying, no, Ralph is not a liar. That's not effective public relations, you know? And that's the sad thing. But we're on politicians, but even some of the companies, some of the companies are not doing what they're supposed to do. And maybe it's because I studied in the U.S. and you see it in the U.S. Like everything in the U.S., they kind of have a plan.
They're very precise with, branding and messaging is concerned.
Yeah, so they make sure that the message they want is being portrayed as much as possible. And even like social media, there are a lot of people who post and they post conflicting things. So when you're reading someone's social media, they think they're posting that they're such a great person, and other people are saying, nah, this person doesn't know what they're doing, because 1 minute they're saying the sky is yellow and the next minute the sky is blue. You have to be mindful of the images and basically what the message that you're portraying. You need to be able to align yourself with your values and be able to portray that to the larger public.
Indeed. So with that, I have two questions that just came to mind. One of them being, what are the key factors then in shaping one's message? What do persons, whether it's a politician, a business leader, or business itself, any professional, have to consider when shaping a message for your brand and for the public?
The first thing they need to know is what they believe in. What does this company or what does this person stand for? We all have things that we believe in. In the U.S., they'll tell you to find. There are people who are animal lovers. There are people who will fight for the rights of kids. There are people who are against, domestic abuse. But then you find it. And especially with businesses, then you can shape where you are putting your support. So if you're someone who doesn't believe in domestic violence, then you would partner with the shelter and do projects with the shelter. And that's how you would get things out. You're not going to do random photo shoots giving out ham in a roundabout, because that's not in line with the value and the message you have. Yes, it might be effective for like, oh, wow, this person did this. But
for social good, but yeah.
In the long run, you want to build a rapport. You want to build history with the people that you believe in and that you stand for. So you have to know your values, and then you have to start to figure out for yourself what's your, I wouldn't say what's the narrative, but who are you as a person? Like, are you a fun person, or are you more serious? Are you this? And then, especially with companies, you can determine how you're going to present your message, because the way how you present your message is important. Because you could have a great message, but if you don't present it correctly to fit in line with the image that they already have of you and your target audience, your message is going to go nowhere.
So the next thing that comes to mind then is, how can companies or individuals maximize the use of a public relations rep? Because I think the main challenge you get is, as you explained, either unwillingness to cooperate, but then usually, I guess maybe it's seen as just again put out just write an article and it'll say enough for us. But how do you then cooperate and maximize the use of someone like you?
Well, you would have to go and have a consultation with the person, and you have to understand that public relations officer, they're just coming in to help you. they're going to tell you things that you may not like to hear, but in the long run, they are on your team. They are trying to make you better. And obviously making you better helps them because you're their client, you know. But you need to sit down and be open for that communication. And you need to also provide information, because sometimes you can walk in and someone just doesn't know. They don't know what they want. But in having a conversation, you could kind of figure out, okay, well, these are 3 key things that you would like to do. And then the public relations person can tell you, okay, well, let's maximize these, you know. And also, we don't do enough research on this island, like market research and stuff like that. People open businesses and it's like, they don't check. They don't see what's necessarily missing in that market. They don't know how they're being seen in the market. So a public relations officer could turn around and help you. They can get that information for you. They can do surveys, different things, and get information back to you to tell you how people are viewing you. And based on that, if people think, hey, Ralph is a great person and that's the image you want, then there may not be any additional work to be done. But if they come back and they say, hey, you know, Ralph, he's kind of like, then that person will be able to give you effective ways to fix that problem and tell you, well, this is how we can do it in an organic way.
I'm so glad he emphasized
this
organic.
just popped in my mind because I actually worked with them on this. But Emil Lee, a few years ago, he had a whole problem where he misquoted how big the island was.
I think he said 34 square miles.
34 square miles.
Yeah.
I will say this about him. He owned up to his mistake straight off the bat. And in a discussion, he was like, how do I make it right? And then he partnered, well, I can't necessarily say partnered, but he reached out to the gentleman from 37 square miles.
York.
Yes, he reached out to Sean York. He purchased a shirt.
Yeah.
He took a picture and he was like, I'm never going to forget that the island is 37 square miles. That was effective public relations. Because he didn't say, hey, I didn't say 34 square miles. He said, no, look, hey, guys, I said 34 square miles. My bad. It was a slip of tongue. But here you go. I got the shirt. I know it's 37 square miles. And people, well, some people were able to move on from that, you know? So it's stuff like that. But you have to be open to saying you're wrong.
Yeah, because even in that, you can't please everyone.
Yeah, you cannot.
Yeah.
And the goal is not to please everyone. Mm-hmm. The goal is to manage the image and the message that you're portraying. So even though everyone wasn't pleased, it wasn't something that was swept under the rug or not discussed. It was addressed. Yes, it was addressed head on, and that was that. And over time, his actions just had to prove. I don't think he ever said 34 square miles again, you know? So we have to understand sometimes people do make mistakes, but you have to look at their actions after the fact. If they're still making the same mistake, obviously they didn't learn. If it's something that they've learned from, we got to cut some slack.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense indeed. So now that you're doing Tropsicles and stuff, what is it like coming up with flavors and actually creating those popsicles? and I can imagine it is quite a labor of love and could be time consuming, perhaps.
Yes. So a lot of people, when you say like, oh, I do ice pops, they think of like the old time ice pops that you got for 25 cents.
Yeah. Oh man.
In the cups. Those were amazing. Yeah.
Especially after school.
Yeah, but like your neighborhood ice pop person was just either mixing Kool-Aid or some type of juice and freezing it.
Yeah, yeah.
With these ice pops, it's a little bit more technical. So there are like recipes, and I have to balance recipes. In the beginning, it was a bit difficult because you're like, each fruit has a different, like their flavors have different strengths. So something like lime, I need to put more lime than I would put like mango. Watermelon, I have to put like way more watermelon than I would do kiwi, you know? So in the beginning, it was hard to, figure out the recipes, balance them, and then you want to make sure that the flavor is consistent. So
yes,
in the beginning, yes, it took a lot, and it's not something that I just did. Like, I actually did research. I did courses, different things, and now I get to have fun with it because when it comes to new flavors, I could just try new flavors because I have an idea of what works and what doesn't work. I think right now I have like 14 flavors, and I have to keep stopping myself from adding flavors because what's been happening is people they try one and then they're
hope.
stuck on one flavor and they don't want to try the rest. And then when they do try something else, you're like, oh, but this tastes good too. And it's like, oh, please try all.
Yeah.
But yeah, it took a lot. Listen, having Tropsicle really taught me about entrepreneurship. I really thought I knew what it was to be an entrepreneur and to work for yourself. And I always knew like, oh, you work more than if you work a 9 to 5. But I have been up till like 2:00 in the morning making pops to make sure they're ready to go out the next morning, and then be back up at 5:00 in the morning to go get things ready to go to an event. And it's never, you're always working. And right now, because of Tropsicle, I'm doing everything. So I'm the person doing the recipes. I'm the person making the pops. I'm the person marketing the pops. I'm the person selling the pops. I'm doing everything. And it can be overwhelming.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
So proper time management is necessary. But for me, like, I love it. Like, I really go into a zone because I know what I'm doing. I know down to a T how long it's going to take me to make a batch of pops, how long they should stay in the freezer before I take them out to an event. And it's kind of therapeutic. When I go in there, it's I like it. I enjoy it. But again, yeah, it's not the walk in the park that I thought it would be. I didn't think making ice pops would have me so busy, but it does. So hats off to all the other food and beverage vendors out there, because
being in a
I don't know how you do
any
it.
sort of food business, it takes a lot of time.
Yeah,
indeed. But I really love that you share the experience, especially for people listening who may have interest or already are a part of it. That is a reality that so many you can share, and it is why when we have discussions on supporting our local businesses, supporting small businesses and so forth is essential, because in many ways, as we know for sure, we keep the economy running as well.
Yeah, I mean, what I learned in my entrepreneurial journey with Tropsicle is that there are a lot of other local businesses that are willing to work with you. There are other local businesses that are willing to. There are times where you go to an event and we're all buying from each other.
Yes.
So the money is kind of just going around in a circle, and you laugh because you're like, well, we're just going in a circle, but that's the way the economy works. But what I think people underestimate is, for a small business, especially a small local business, we're not making the profit that people think we're making. Especially a lot of the startups, we're not out of the stage where we're still paying a lot of like costs, and we haven't reached that break-even point yet to even say, well, we're making money.
Or to hire that many people.
And a lot of times it's not that I want to do everything myself, but I just can't afford to bring in someone else, because I don't want to pay them little or nothing, but I can't afford to come in and bring someone in and say like, hey, come and do this. But then I found ways. I've worked with different people, and like a lot of the delivery people, they're awesome. So they'll do like barter deals and stuff like, hey, you need something delivered, I can get it delivered for you. How can we work this out? And that's what I appreciate. But a lot of the small businesses, that money is going towards bills for the company. And if there's anything left over, it's like a bill that they have to pay for their to stay alive,
Yeah.
And
your means.
Yeah,
means
it's just
living.
like prices are going up, and even freight is a big expense right now. And for a lot of us, we're not getting things locally. A lot of our products aren't coming locally. So, and by that, I mean like packaging. We could say what we want, but we don't really have anywhere to go get packaging stuff. I mean, there's a few places, but
then price-wise, it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense,
Not at all.
Although now with freight, it might start making sense, but it's not an easy thing. So don't think that you're going to go buy a $10 plate of food that this person is going home with like $8.
Yeah.
In reality, that person is probably going home with 50 cents, And it's not that we're trying to get rich. We're trying to help and give back to the community. But, we need a little love and support all throughout the year, not just one time of year.
Seasonal or whatever. Yeah, indeed. Because it's like a discussion self and others had when that post on Facebook, about looking for a white waitress or whatever. We need to start valuing. Yeah, they definitely need. They could have called you. We need to start valuing ourselves.
Yes.
When we see our peers and others in business, it's not to envy them and think, well, boy, that person rolling in dough. It's like,
no, it's not.
they probably
They
only
probably
have like
have-
3 hours of running on 3 hours of sleep.
And they probably have debt piling up, you know.
So yeah, indeed, in that value and support of each other, we will take it to another level, and it is definitely happening.
Yeah.
You know, and so with all of that, I'm pretty sure what makes it all the more interesting, to say the least, is being a mom. You know, you're a mother of 2,
Yes.
and yeah, it's not easy, considering the fact that you know, being a single mom as well.
Yes.
So how do you manage this? Is kind of broad, but I guess what the day in the life of Dominique, what is that like?
Oh, I don't think you want to be a day in the life. Well, I've been blessed with 2 amazing children. And I must say, like I said, I started to go down the entrepreneurial path when my daughter was born. And she's been a blessing. Like, people will tell you, Dominique, everywhere you go, I see you with your daughter. Yep. Because she's going to be there. She can learn. There are things she can learn and she can see. And then now with my son, it kind of puts you back because he's only 3. So my daughter is 10. There are times where I could take her and she could actually help me with an event. But a 3-year-old, their attention span is going to be like, okay, this was fun for 10 minutes. I've had enough. Can I go play? Can I go do this? But entrepreneurship also gives you the freedom to spend more time with your kids. And that was a big thing for me. Even when I was working, I started to emphasize that I wanted to work hours that would allow me to do things with them. So my daughter is involved in a lot of after-school activities. I think it's just me pushing her to be an achiever. But once I pick them up, I leave whatever I'm doing to go pick them up from school. And then from school, basically for the next 3-4 hours, we're running back and forth. So most days it's dance. She does about 2.5 hours of dance 4 times a week. And then because of all these other activities, more stuff come onto it. So like this weekend, I have a jam-packed weekend because I do have a private event that I have to deal with. But my daughter also has her Christmas show. So I'm leaving the event early to be able to go pick her up, get her ready for her show, get her to the show on time, and then also volunteer at the show. And then you're finishing late at night, like the Saturday night. Last Saturday, we got home at about 11. Get them in bed, get them back up the next morning. We're doing it all over again. I've timed it like driving around the island. Basically, you could get anywhere around the island in a half an hour, depending on traffic. Yeah. Lately, not so much. But as much as I want to be involved in their lives, I also wanted them to have activities. So, but that's also a strain because now I'm working to make sure that their activities are paid. But yeah, I do anything for them. The hardest times would be when they're sick because I want to do stuff, but I can't because priority then becomes my kid. I need to make sure that they're feeling better. And for those who have kids, they would know when they're sick, they want mommy. They want mommy there. And it's hard. There's been times where I've had to leave one of them sick with a family member and I know they're in great care, but I'm at an event and my mind is like, are they okay? Like, did they get their medicine? Did they get this? And that's the hardest. Sometimes it feels like, oh, I don't want to do this. But then I'm reminded that I'm doing it so they can see that it's possible and they can go out there and reach for the stars and not limit themselves to like, oh, I need to go work from 9 to 5 every day. No, even if you work 9 to 5, which I'm not against, try to do something for you on the other hand. But I will say balancing mom life, the entrepreneurship life, and just being a woman, it's hard because in the Caribbean, we don't value our mothers as women. So you can be a mother, but then they only look at you as a mother. So anytime that you take outside of being a mother, it's like, what's she doing? Where's she going? Yeah. Oh, where her children? They don't see when you're there with your kids 24/7, you know? They don't see that. Or they're going to be like, oh, the ones who don't have kids will be like, oh, but you need time for yourself. You need to go out. You need to do this. Great. Sounds great. I want to do it, but I can't. Like, the one thing I haven't been able to do this year is go to the gym. I enjoy working out. Just, it frees my mind. But realistically, time-wise, I can't do it. And I've decided that is something I'm okay removing out of my schedule to be able to accomplish everything else. But again, for everyone, you have to find your level of comfort because you're not going to get me to give up my coffee. So that's not happening. You know, I'm going to have my coffee, and coffee isn't comparable to going to the gym, but someone might be into yoga and they might need that hour. Mothers need a break from their kids. So don't think when you see a mother out there that it's wild abandonment. They need a moment. Sometimes you just need to be able to breathe.
You're human too. Yeah, indeed.
Yes.
Yeah, and those are, social norms that we are definitely challenging, that's for sure. And that it's good to see so many also embrace, the changes that are necessary.
Yes.
Because if you're not well, you can't take care of your kids either.
Exactly.
Whether it's dealing with stress, you need that mental release to be physically fit as well, and all those factors. Because, it's like we notice that we have this heritage of carrying burdens that make us seem so strong and wonderful.
I don't think we want to go down that rabbit hole.
But yeah, indeed. But the point is like, let's change things. Let's change the way we consider. Let's say, especially that common phrase. I had a strong mother, a strong woman, but ensure that there is a real sense of community and wholeness.
Yes. So I will say this because you brought it up. That strong Black woman, especially in the Caribbean, is coming from slavery. And we don't talk about it enough. I feel like in the Caribbean, we kind of have slavery as like, oh yeah, there was slavery, but there's no longer slavery and we're good. I feel like African Americans always discuss it, but we don't discuss it, I would say, enough. But that strong Black woman is because during slavery, as a Black woman, you had to be and do everything for survival. And you could not show emotion. You could not do anything. So a lot of times, a lot of mothers in the Caribbean, they grow up kind of not showing a lot of emotion. They love their kids to death, but there was not a lot of affection, let me put it that way, because it was something that was passed on from generation to generation. And I think a lot of the older generation don't realize where it's coming from. A lot of times we just look at people like, oh, that's just how they are. But no, like, you deserve to take a rest. You do not have to do everything and be everything for everyone, But again, there are people who will tell you if they sit down for a break, they feel guilty, and you have to, it takes a lot to get past that mentality, but we have to talk about it in order to change the narrative.
Definitely. So I think we ended it off on a good note. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I just want to say, whatever your dreams are, it's never too late to go after a new dream, and just have faith in yourself. Have faith in God first, of course, and seek his will, but have faith in yourself and go for it.
Great. Okay, so thank you. That was Dominique Hodge on the news behind the news. Thank you guys so much for listening and tuning in, and take care until tomorrow.